Well, I want to welcome you to this IEP Tips to Equip video series on the IEP requirements for students whose behavior impedes learning. In part one, we're going to be talking about functional behavior assessment, or the FBA, and how when a child's behavior impedes his learning or the learning of others, the team must develop a plan, including positive behavior interventions, supports, and strategies that address that behavior. So let's get started. IEP tip to equip number 1, create a plan to address those behaviors. If a child's behavior impedes his learning or the learning of others, the IEP team must develop a plan, including positive behavior interventions, supports, and other strategies to address that behavior. And those services should be added to his or her IEP. And the goal really is to enable all children with disabilities to learn to be able to correctly socialize and live and function in their communities. The law, federal regulations, and commentary describe what an IEP team must do when a child's behavior impedes the child's learning or the learning of others. So the starting point is to determine whether the student has behaviors that impede the learning of the student or others. So what does impedes learning mean? Well, the cases have found behavior impeding learning in sort of the obvious cases. If it's classroom temper tantrums, or maybe the student has meltdowns or outbursts, maybe there's disruption of the teacher or the students during instruction, but it can also include things that don't really disrupt the classroom, like, for example, sleeping in class, or maybe just refusal to participate, a shutting down, or refusal to follow directions in class. So it doesn't necessarily have to be disruptive behavior to the classroom. Also remember that we're not just talking about behaviors that are a manifestation of the child's disability. The IEP team has to address these behaviors, even if they have nothing to do with the child's disability, but they still need to be addressed if they're impeding the child's learning or that of others. So let's look at the functional behavior assessment, or FBA. What is it? Well, it's a behavior assessment that's conducted in order to provide the IEP team with more information regarding the problem behavior or behaviors and their causes. Now, OSEP, which is the Office of Special Education Programs, has stated that you must have consent to conduct this FBA, or functional behavior assessment. And that implies that an FBA is more than simply a review of existing data in the child's file. So what you're doing is you're doing an assessment to gather new information and determine the function of the behavior that you're concerned about. IEP tip to equip number 2. If the IEP team needs more information in order to explain the cause or purpose behind a child's behavior, it's a good idea to conduct an FBA, because not every problem behavior needs an assessment. If it's patently clear why the child is behaving the way the child is behaving, maybe an FBA is not necessary. But if you need more information about the root cause of the behavior or how to plan for alternative behaviors, it's a good idea to conduct an FBA. So look at whether that behavior, first of all, is impeding learning, and second of all, whether you need more information to explain the purpose behind the student's behavior. In that situation, an FBA is probably warranted. So what is the goal of the FBA? Well, it's to develop a hypothesis about the behavior and to develop replacement behaviors that don't interfere with the child's education. IEP tip to equip number 3, the FBA must be appropriate. Though the federal law, the IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, lacks a definition for an FBA, it still must be appropriate. And this connects to the same standard for other substantive areas of the IEP, and whether the child is progressing towards their goals. So, for example, if a child's behavior is decreasing and the child is gaining skills that address the behavior deficits being targeted, then you probably have a good FBA and a good BIP, which is a behavior intervention plan, which we'll talk about in part 2 of this video. Anything else might indicate that either the FBA did not accurately identify the antecedents or the causes for the behavior, or maybe the adults responsible for implementing the plan and skill acquisitions aren't doing so consistently or even accurately. So this concludes part 1 of our discussion on IEP requirements for students whose behavior impedes learning. In part 2, we'll be talking about the BIP, or the Behavior Intervention Plan, which is a plan designed to teach and reinforce positive behavior. Sign up for our newsletter at iepsolution.com, and we'll keep you apprised as to upcoming IEP Tips to Equip videos, as well as live workshops and boot camps that will go into topics such as this in much more detail, as well as other important special education topics. Thank you for watching this IEP Tips to Equip video.